and good morning to everybody. Thanks for joining the seminar and for your interest in the FuelEU Maritime regulation. It's a very short, a few words from me, giving you some update what's happening on the different secondary acts and also other documents that we've been planning to issue and publish to support and help you to prepare compliance with the FuelEU Maritime regulation. First, I will tell you about the secondary acts. So we've been eagerly waiting and working on two implementing acts. One is on the monitoring plans. That includes the template of the famous monitoring plan that we are expecting companies to submit by the end of August. And the other one is the implementing act on verification activities, which explains how verifiers should be working on the assessment of the verification of various documents and data that are reported by companies throughout the whole implementation of the FuelEU Maritime regulation. Now, finally, the news is that both of these acts will be published in the official journal of the European Union on the 29th of July, so in a few days' time. They are scheduled. The college has adopted them. Unfortunately, the translations took much longer than we expected because of the heavy workload of the translation office of the European Commission, because the mandate of the Commission is finishing, so a lot of translations were coming in. But now we have a scheduled publication date, so we have the final formal document that you can submit and you can fill out and submit for the monitoring plans. You will see that this document that will be published on the 20th of July will be very much the same that went through public consultation in April and May. The changes that were introduced are really minor, basically just working on the terminology to make it more consistent across the documents or consistent with other implementing acts as well. And also we are talking about, so in a way, if you are started working on the basis of that draft monitoring plan, there wouldn't be any surprise for you. And as I said, the monitoring plans and the verification activities will be published together. So the next thing to do is to look at this monitoring plan, fill it up, and register it in an electronic format in the FuelEU database. I can say that the relevant functionalities of the FuelEU database that will permit you to take the electronic template and also to upload the electronic template will be opened in the coming days. But Jose and my colleagues will EMSA, they will tell a little bit more about this. The deadline is what is given in the regulation is the 31st of August. Now we fully understand that we put you into a difficult situation. There have been various delays in publishing the final format of the monitoring plan. Still, we would like to ask you to start working on this as soon as possible and try to make sure that that this reaches the database as soon as possible, because it is good for everybody, good for you, good for the verifiers, good for the national authorities that actually we are making progress on this monitoring plan. Then the next issue is another forthcoming secondary act, which is the delegated regulation on the accreditation of verifiers. Here we again experience some delay. This is due to the fact that the parliament went on recess after the elections. So here what we see is the publication will be possible only in October. This delegated act is being translated now, but then we will need a 2 months period when the Council and the European Parliament can veto or give an opinion on the final format of the text. So we need to wait for this 2 months to pass and to be after this 2 months period. For the moment, we suggest a kind of intermediate solution. that helps us to progress with the verification work. So our proposal is that those verifiers, those verification bodies that already hold a valid MRV ETS accreditation, and also at the same time submit a binding application for FuelEU accreditation to their national accreditation bodies, they can start working on the verification of the FuelEU monitoring plans. So we'll be communicating this formally to all the verification bodies and to all the national accreditation bodies. We talk about around 20 verifiers and around 9 national accreditation bodies. So they will get this opinion, they'll get this this message, and they will know that they can go ahead with the verification on this basis if they meet these 2 requirements. And then when the accreditation of verifiers, the delegated act, will be published, they can actually do the formal accreditation of the verifiers for the FuelEU for all kinds of functionalities, not just for the monitoring plan. So what is important is that companies, they are uploading their monitoring in the FuelEU database, and also they identify a verifier that has the possibility, the opportunity to do the verification. So this is all about the upcoming secondary acts. I also wanted to tell you that we published a Q&A, a question and answers document that is covering the FuelEU Maritime regulation. It is published now on the website of DG Move and also on the website of EMSA. For the moment, you are seeing a forwarding link to the Move website. This Q&A contains 52 questions and answers. They are very much the one that we received through the various communication from stakeholders, from companies, from verifiers. So they are addressing and giving a very definite answer, very precise answer on how these questions can be interpreted, and also we try to make the language of the Q&As something that is accessible, something that is clear, something that is free of legal version, so easier to handle and understand than the text of the regulation itself. So please go and inform yourself. There will be really interesting questions and relevant and useful questions there together with their answer. The third thing that I would like to address is an issue that we've been getting a number of questions recently, and we see and we believe that there's some misunderstanding that has been created or appeared among many companies or even some verifiers, namely about the allocation of fuels used in international journeys. So I would like to shed some light and make it a little bit clear what we are talking about, what are the exact rules in the FuelEU for this. So just to start to describe again that the FuelEU covers 100% of the energy used for intra-European voyages. So intra-European voyages is between one European port and another European port. Here we take 100%. Then only 50% of the energy used for international voyages is counting for the FuelEU. An international voyage is a voyage between an EU port and a port that is located outside the EU. And those voyages that are taken between 2 ports and both ports are located outside the EU, they do not count. They do not count for the FuelEU maritime regulations. They are beyond the mandate of this regulation. So now we have some specific rules on how we count fuels for international journeys. So what we say in the regulation and also in the Q&A, you will see it explained very clearly that all renewable and low carbon fuels used in an international voyage can be counted as contributing to the regulated half of the international voyage. But if such fuels represent more than 50% of the energy used during the entire voyage, then the excess, that part above 50%, the excess fuels will not be counted. So I put here on the slide 2 examples. One is use of a bioblend B30 for an international voyage where 30% is biodiesel and 70% of fossil diesel. So in this case, the whole biodiesel fraction can be counted to cover the energy used during an international voyage. So for that 50%, 30% will be, for the regulated 50%, the 30% biodiesel will be there, plus the remaining fuel will have to be taken from the fossil fuel diesel package. But if we have a bioblend B60, which is 60% biodiesel and 40% fossil diesel, then obviously only 50% of the biodiesel can be used for the regulated part of the international voyage. So the 10% that goes above the 50%, they will be lost. They will not be able to take into account for the purpose of the FuelEU regulation. And here you can see some visuals that try to explain what the two examples that I just presented. So again, biodiesel, all the biodiesel can go to the regulated part of the voyage, but if the biodiesel is more than 60%, then only the 50% of the biodiesel can go to the regulated part of the voyage. So this is something that is important to keep in mind. Also, we received questions that are somehow related to this issue, namely regarding the pooling and international voyages. So here it is important to emphasize that only vessels that are calling at that make a call at European ports during the reporting period can participate in pooling. So if you have a vessel that only covers New York, Rio de Janeiro, and does not come to the EU, it cannot participate in any pool. If you have a vessel that does a number of voyages that are not having a stop or not including EU ports, then only those voyages will be counted that have an EU port element. So if the same vessel does New York, Rotterdam, that the energy used for that specific trip will be counted in the FuelEU, but the trip New York, Miami will not be counting for the purpose of the FuelEU. So this is important to see when you are creating the pools, when you're allocating the fuel used for international voyages, and also when you're doing banking and borrowing, the other flexibility mechanism. It will be important to take these things into consideration, that only vessels and trips that are connected to the EU, they will be counted, will be taken into consideration for the FuelEU Maritime regulation. So that's all I wanted to say this morning. So again, the major news is that the monitoring plans will be out on the 29th. So I wish you good luck and the hard work of filling them out and registering them in the database as soon as possible. Thank you, Jose. The floor goes back to you.
I will just quickly address this because it appears a lot of questions regarding the allocation of the fuels in international voyage. Just trying to clarify, because it is a topic that is appearing quite often in the help desk, and it seems that there is still some doubt regarding that point. Just trying to clarify, for example, that there was a question stating if for the ETS MRV the process will be the same. It is not, because for ETS MRV the legal requirement is based on emissions, so if it is 50% of the emissions, and under the FuelEU Maritime the requirement is 50% of the energy. It is this divergency in the legal requirement that makes that approach for the allocation of fuels, it is different. So in FuelEU, there is no specific requirement in terms of the 50% of emissions. It is 50% of the energy, and then the companies will report 50% of the energy that was used during the voyage. So it is up to the companies to report that 50% and to select the 50% of the energy as they wish. What we expect is that the companies will select the 50% with lowest greenhouse gas intensity. Just to reply to that additional question, that if it will be automatically calculated by the system, it will not, because the regulation states is 50% of the energy. There is no specific process to select which 50% of the energy. What it is expected, like it is presented in the FAQs, it will be the lowest greenhouse gas energy, because it's the most beneficial for the companies. In terms of, there was a question that it is slightly different what was presented from the FAQs. So the understanding is it is 50% of the yearly energy used in international voyage. So it's not possible to reallocate consumption of fuels that was not in international voyage for the 50% or the other way around. But it's not calculated on a per voyage basis. The per voyage basis is intended to distinguish between international and intra-EU voyage, and from the amount of the summation of what is the annual fuels used in international voyage, then you need to select 50% of that energy that was used. I hope this clarify a little bit more that issue. Now I will go to my presentation. I think my presentation will answer a lot of the questions that appeared in the chat, so I'm very happy for that, because I think we will address many of the concerns that you have. So what I will present is what you will be able to see in the, early August in the new version of the TETIS MRV, and it is related to the integration of the FuelEU Maritime. So the legal act, FuelEU Maritime, talks about the FuelEU database. As we mentioned in our last webinar, the understanding of FuelEU database is an ecosystem that will have different functionalities in the various IT systems that EMSA already has, and the main functionalities will be deployed in TETIS MRV. So you should not expect a new IT system called FuelEU database. What you will be able to see is many of the requirements of the legal act for the FuelEU database will be implemented in TETIS MRV. So what we are going to show you now is how we are doing this integration in TETIS MRV and what you can expect to appear in the system. Also, we will explain exactly how you will be able to submit the FuelEU monitoring plan in the TETIS MRV. There is a question that is often appearing regarding how the ship owner will interact with the ISM company, because as we know, the regulated entity for FuelEU is always the ISM, the dog holder or the technical manager, but for the ETS MRV, there is flexibility. In some cases, it will be the ship owner. But we will try to explain the different scenarios and how the user can interact in the system. In terms of the timeline, what you can expect, just a quick review what we showed in the last webinar. So we are going to deploy in early August the new version of the TETIS MRV with integration of FuelEU and the functionalities for you to do the submission of the monitoring plan in TETIS MRV. And just to clarify that aspect, companies have to submit the monitoring plan to the verifiers in TETIS MRV. That will be clarified in the secondary legislation in the template for the FuelEU Maritime, as it clearly states that the submission is done through an electronic template. Regarding the question of the XML file, we already shared with the invite, with the email, where you can already download at this point the version of the FuelEU monitoring plan XML file. It is still a draft, but when we are releasing the version of the TETIS MRV, an updated version of the XML file for the upload of FuelEU monitoring plan will also be updated. But at the moment, in the support page of the TETIS MRV, you can already download the template for the XML file related to the FuelEU monitoring plan. So in terms of what you will have this year, it is focused on the FuelEU Maritime integration and the monitoring plan, and the additional functionalities will appear in 2025. Together with this new version, we will have also tutorial videos to provide some assistance, because we know that it is a significant change here with the integration of FuelEU. Just a quick review about the users, the TETIS MRV, what the FuelEU Maritime will bring to the system. As already explained, the regulated entity is the ISM company. This means that the same ship can have a different company for MRV ETS than FuelEU Maritime. So the system will allow to both companies manage the ship in TETIS MRV. Regarding the verifier, as already mentioned, we have two legal scopes and two different accreditations. So the verifier needs to upload the accreditation for the FuelEU Maritime to be able to receive the monitoring plan. As Peter mentioned, we will have an interim period, and for the first step is the verifier to request to the NABs the application or the intent to apply for the accreditation of FuelEU, and then they should share that information with EMSA. So we will allow in an interim step for them to receive the monitoring plans. After the verifiers being accredited, they will be allowed to assess the monitoring plans. In terms of the timeline, the 31st of August is the deadline for the companies to submit the monitoring plan to the verifiers. The verifiers have as a deadline to assess the monitoring plans by the end of this year. So this interim solution is to allow companies to submit the monitoring plan to the verifiers, but then the verifiers, if everything goes well, will already be accredited before the end of the year to do the assessment of the monitoring plan. We also have new users for the state members, meaning the administering state, that is the competent authority for FuelEU Maritime, and also the competent authority for the port of call and the NAB as they already exist. So you can expect in this year and in the next years different functionalities to be appearing in the TETIS MRV. We will focus today what will happen in this August, that it is the FuelEU Maritime and integration with the FuelEU. So one of the main changes that will change my fleet page and the functionalities in the system is allowing for a company to add a ship only for the FuelEU scope. So companies, when adding the ships, will declare if they are assuming both responsibilities, MRV ETS, or only one of them. Another one is allowing companies that are in the scope of FuelEU or assuming responsibilities for FuelEU to submit the FuelEU monitoring plan to the verifier. You will be already seeing where the FuelEU report will be integrated in the system, but for the moment, that functionality is not available, as it will only be deployed in early 2025. For the verifiers, what you will be able to see is that you can submit an accreditation specific for the FuelEU Maritime scope. So verifiers that are accredited at the moment will see that their accreditation will be mentioning that they are only accredited for MRV ETS, and if they want, they will be able to submit an accreditation for FuelEU. So in the system, what you will be able to see in this new version. So you will be able to see that you will have in your system a FuelEU monitoring plan and a FuelEU report. When you go to the ship, you will be able to see that you'll have two scopes, ETS MRV and FuelEU Maritime, and you will be able to add the ship to a specific scope. So when you go to the My Fleet page, you will be able to see that associated to one ship, you will have two companies, one per legal scope. Or if you have one company, as it is the second line, it will clearly be mentioning that that company is assuming both legal scopes. You can create the FuelEU monitoring plan. The functionality is very similar of what you will have for the creation of MRV monitoring plan. You will be able to see both status of the monitoring plan, the FuelEU monitoring plan and the MRV monitoring plan. And the verifier, you will be able to see that if it is the same verifier doing the assessment or verification for both legal scopes, or if the company has chosen different verifiers per legal scope. You will also be able to filter per legal scope to facilitate the visualization of the data in the My Fleet page. My colleague Tatiana will then explain a little bit more in the system how you can navigate. Regarding the creation and the submission of the FuelEU monitoring plan, in terms of the users, we are talking about companies, but what Tethys MRV allows is rights to the user, and one user can create more than one company in the system. So if you are a user with a company that is assuming both legal scopes, or if you are a user that created two companies that will assume both legal scopes, the functionality in the system will be the same, and you will have access rights to both ships to the ship in both legal scopes. A different case is when different users have created the companies in different accounts. This will mean that each user in its account will have access only to a specific legal scope. Trying to better explain this in a diagram. So what you can see here is a user that has created a company, an ISM company, and this company add the ship in both legal scopes. So it will allow them to create both MRV and FuelEU monitoring plans and emission reports. If the user wants to create two companies, one ISM company and one ship owner in its account, but it is the same user, he will have two companies and he will have access rights to both MRV and FuelEU and all the functionalities. But if the companies were created in different accounts, for example, if a user created a ship owner and only added the ship in the scope of the MRV ETS, he will be able to create the MRV monitoring plan and the emission report, but the system will not allow it for the FuelEU scope. The same thing will happen if the user only have the ISM company and only adds to the FuelEU scope. So what you will have is two users with different companies in its account accessing different information in the system, one in the FuelEU and the other one in the MRV. What will they have in common? As you know, who is using the system, have the reporting of the data in the ship page. And the reporting of emission and fuel consumption will be done only once. So the data from fuel consumption is only once reported, and both users can do that. And from the data reported, both users can create the reports. So when we get to the reporting of fuel consumption, that needs to be common, and that will be done under the ship page. We will further elaborate this when we will have the webinar related to the FuelEU report that will be happening later this year or early next year. One of the questions that already appeared in the chat was if the system will allow the copy functionality for the MRV monitoring plan. And the answer is yes. When you select the option to create the FuelEU monitoring plan, if you select clone sections from the MRV monitoring plan, the system will clone the MRV monitoring plan in the specific tables that are common for both monitoring plans. And I will further elaborate this a bit, just trying to explain exactly what you can expect in the system from the MRV to the FuelEU. For most or for all ships, there are at least 2 tables that are needed to be introduced for the FuelEU monitoring plan that doesn't exist for the MRV. And that table is table B9 related to the emission factors, because MRV doesn't have well-to-tank emission factors. So the table B9 it is a table that is mandatory, and all companies, when creating the FuelEU monitoring plan, need to add, because that table doesn't exist in the MRV monitoring plan. Also, the table E5 related to management is a table that is specific for FuelEU Maritime, because it's a table to control the data that is specific for the FuelEU Maritime. All the other tables that we can see here is specific for some ship types or specific for some ships that have substitute sources of energy or have ice class and want to have the derogations related to the ice class. So the tables for all ships that are required is table B9 and E5, and the other tables are specific for some derogations. We explained in our last webinar the content of these specific tables, so I will not go any further on the explanation related to these tables. So what I advise is for you to see our last webinar. It is published in EMSA website, and we will further after this webinar, when we will share the recording of this session, we will also include the recordings or the link to the previous webinar, as we see that many people is asking for it, but we will also provide for that. And this is what the quick overview that I had for you today. We know that is a lot of information. You will see many new functionalities in the system. What the system is trying to do, or what we are trying to do in the enhancements of the system, is to alleviate the burden from the MRV to the FuelEU Maritime. So as much as possible, you will have functionalities that will be able to copy or to use the data that is common. Just one last comment. The functionalities that you will have in early August, due to the very tight deadline that we had, won't have all the functionalities that we have foreseen for the FuelEU monitoring plan. So in later this year, you will have a new version of the Thetis MRV that will allow the cloning between different ships. So if you already have a FuelEU Maritime monitoring plan in one ship, the system will allow you to clone that monitoring plan to a different ship, the specific monitoring plan for FuelEU, as you do at the moment for the MRV. But this new functionality for FuelEU won't be available in the first version, but the uploading of the XML file for FuelEU will be ready since the first version. And now I will pass the floor to my colleague Tatiana for her, and I'm sure that it will be much more useful for you to, in fact, see the system, how it works and how it interacts with the user.
Hello, everyone. Before I start going deeper in the system, like a short disclaimer that what I'm showing you today, this is from the test environment, which we use to test new functionalities. So this is not a live system which you can access. And all the data which you will see, including ships and companies, also have been manipulated for the demonstration purposes. Let's start with the My Fleet page. You can see the system is still the same. It looks similar to what we have now. However, you can already notice that there are some changes. If I scroll down to see My Fleet, that you already can notice that some additional tags, MRV, are everywhere on the My Fleet page. So this is the case when in Thetis MRV account, we already have 3 ships in our fleet, and all of them so far have been added in our managed companies under MRV scope. So after the integration of FuelEU, which will happen with the deployment of this version of the system in early August, those companies, after they log into their account in Thetis MRV, they will see a similar structure. They will see that they have all their ships, and they will see that all their ships are added into the MRV company. They have assigned MRV verifier, and also they would see MRV monitoring plan status in case the monitoring plan was created in the system. So with the introduction of the FuelEU, so that's how visually you will be able to distinguish between MRV scope and FuelEU. We will see it a bit later because I will follow this demonstration by creating also the monitoring plan for FuelEU, and you will see like later how the FuelEU tag or how the FuelEU scope will appear also on My Fleet. Okay, so first of all, this is like coming back to the presentation of Jose. He explained that there could be several situations or several cases how companies would prefer to manage activities under each scope. And in this case, for this demonstration purposes, I'm choosing the scope, this case number 1, when all the companies are under MRV scope are in your Thetis MRV account, and also I have the same ship, the same company assumes also responsibility for the FuelEU. So everything is under one MRV, under one Thetis MRV account. And in this case, if we want to start creating monitoring plan, first of all, the first step to do is to add ship, the same ship, under the scope of FuelEU. To do that, I will demonstrate it on this example. I will take the ship, the second line, the ship which has the name ship X number 1, which is the test name. And you can see that this ship is already in My Fleet in the company, which is called Oceanics, and it has the verifier assigned, and the monitoring plan has been already submitted to admin authority. So now if I want to work with the ship and start the creation of the plan, first of all, I need to take this ship and add the ship again into My Fleet under the scope of FuelEU. This is very important action, even though that you might think that the ship is already in the fleet, since there could be different cases, there could be a different company assuming the FuelEU responsibility and the company might be in another account. This is the necessary action to start with. So coming back, adding ship, I will put the IMO number, click search. So far you can see that the functionality is exactly the same as in the current versions. And now we can see that this ship indeed has been found. We can read it in the preview messages. And we can see also from those notifications that this ship is ready to be added to your FuelEU fleet. Let's explore a bit further what we can see, even though that users who are already using, they might be familiar with this window. So first of all, the important note is always to notice which commands the system is showing you. So for example, the ship, we already know this, but we can see it also displayed in the system that this ship is already in the fleet under MRV ETS scope. The next, what you need to do is to set the ship and company effect date. That's again exactly the same action which you would do also for the MRV ETS. This is the date which from which you assume the responsibility for this ship under your company. So for example, for the sake of this demonstration, I will choose yesterday. Then the next step is to choose which company is taking the responsibility for the ship under the legal scope. If you have several companies managed in your Thetis MRV account, like it is the case of my test account, you can choose the name of the company from this list. If you have just one, you will have only one name proposed. The difference in comparison to the current version of the system is that now you can define the nature of the company for this specific action under this specific scope. So company taking responsibility under FuelEU scope is of nature ISM company. And you can see that system allows to choose either both or ship owner, because this window which I'm showing you now, it's like a general window. You can add ships into MRV scope, you can add ships into FuelEU scope, or you can add one ship into both scopes at the same time. After those parameters are selected, now we can proceed to add ships found by clicking this button. And we can see some confirmation information. We can see that no verified FuelEU reports, of course, have been already in the system. And this simply we need to confirm this action here. By the first look, you can see that it seems that nothing has been changed. We still have 3 ships in our fleet. However, if you look closely at the last column, which is company, now you can see that for the ship, shipX number 1, now we can have the company Oceanics, which is in both MRV/FuelEU. So it's the same company, assuming both responsibilities for both scopes. I will try to make it more visible for you here. So you can see that now we have this tag FuelEU, which just to save space on the screen is going to be displayed as FEU. We can see Oceanics. We can still see that we have for the ship still only MRV verifier assigned. So the next step before proceeding to the monitoring plan would be to assign the FuelEU verifier. This is to be done exactly the same as in current system version by clicking on the Actions menu. And right away, you can notice the changes also introduced in the Actions menu. You can see that the same tags are introduced here, and you can clearly see that we have options for MRV monitoring plan, MRV emission report, but we also have already the 2 more options for FuelEU monitoring plan, which is available and which will be available in August And also already the system has the FuelEU report, which is currently disabled, and this will come with the next versions of the system. But before going there, as I said, we need to assign the verifier. Exactly the same as you would do for MRV monitoring plan. So action ship edit, we go into the ship page. We go into the verifier tab, and here the difference or the introduced integration is that now we can see verifiers under each legal zone. So we can see the verifier for MRV ETS, which was already added. And now we can see that we have also the section for the verifier for FuelEU, which can be the same or it can be different for the same ship. To add the verifier, the system follows exactly the same approach. By clicking Edit, we can search and see if we have already some verifiers with whom your companies have established partnership agreements. And here, of course, for when we choose the verifier for FuelEU scope, meaning that both verifiers, in this case for the testing purposes, they have already accreditation for FuelEU. So choosing the verifier, we can confirm the details, we save, and now we can see that the verifier for FuelEU has been assigned, and it is a different verifier from MRV ETS. Now we can go back to my fleet, but before doing so, also notice the changes in the header section. The header section is this section above the tabs, which you can see on the ship page. That also some additional information have been introduced. Similar idea that since we have now both scopes and we have monitoring plans under MRV and FuelEU, same goes for the reports. Now you will see all the statuses just for the ease of display and for the usability. You can see that MRV monitoring plan status for the ship is submitted to admin authority. FuelEU empty, we haven't yet created that, and the same goes for emission reports under MRV and FuelEU empty because none of them have been created. Now let's go back to my fleet. And again, since I'm using quite a small screen for this demonstration, I would need to make it a bit more easy for you and more visible, to adjust a bit the column width. So now you can see that for the ship in question, which we're using as an example, you can see that now we have also in the verifier column, we can have the verifier for FuelEU scope assigned. So now all the preconditions are met. So we have company, we have the ship and FuelEU fleet, we have the FuelEU verifier. Now the next step would be to create the FuelEU monitoring plan. Again, one of the options would be to use the interface. I will show you also the XML option later. If you prefer to use the interface, then Actions menu offers you the creation option, FuelEU monitoring plan create. We click and wait a few seconds, and we see that in case the monitoring plan under MRV scope has been already created in the system offers you to facilitate the creation of FuelEU monitoring plan by cloning the sections which are common fields into newly created FuelEU monitoring plan. You can do that, or you can discard this message. If you don't want to do it and want to create the monitoring plan from scratch, starting from the blank, you don't choose this checkbox and just confirm it and continue. However, for the demonstration purposes, let's check that, and let's see what happens if we want to use the already existing monitoring plan under MRV to facilitate the process. Let's confirm. In this case, you might need to wait a few seconds longer while the system copies all the information. And now you can see that monitoring plan under FuelEU looks similar to MRV. So we still have all the information in different tabs. And if I go to the measuring equipment tab, you can see that already something here is pre-filled. Same goes for example, for fuel consumers tab. I can see that, for example, emission sources are already filled in, some procedures are already filled in. So this information is coming from MRV, from the existing MRV monitoring plan. And of course, if something needs any corrections, you can edit, you can delete, you can create, add new fuel consumers and so on. So you can work with exactly the same as you are creating monitoring plan. So here are all the different options and tabs which the system offers you according to the template. I'm not going to into the content of the plan during this demonstration because that's not the purpose of this demo. So let's maybe notice some also important moments. So again, in the header section of the monitoring plan, you can notice that we have FuelEU company, we can have FuelEU verifier, we can see the current status of the monitoring plan. And after we have finished with filling in the information, with completing the contents of the plan, here important to also to note that the system does not control the content, the actual information which you are putting there. So it means that whatever you put there, it's on your responsibility. The system is not going to check whether something is correct or not. The system offers you the workflow, like the submission workflow for the next step in the process, which is submission to the verifier. So you can see that submit to verifier button is available, and if we click it, let's click it. Before submitting, again, you will have the confirmation window to confirm, and the revision version will be generated on this action. So let's confirm, exactly the same as for MRV monitoring plan. As you can see in the test environment, it might take a bit longer as it should. Okay. And now we can notice that the monitoring plan status has changed to submit to verifier. Of course, the button became disabled because we cannot submit the second time. It's already submitted unless the verifier returns the plan back to you for the revision. So let's go back to my fleet page and notice also the differences happened on my fleet after this action. So now you can see that for this ship, we also can clearly see also on the My Fleet page, the monitoring plan status column shows you the status of both monitoring plans. And again, they are identified by the special tag, MRV tag or FuelEU tag. Here, maybe it's also right away, I will show you some filters which might be useful. For example, for those companies who have many ships, not 3 as I have in my test example, but maybe you have more than 10 ships and you have to work with them. So then in this case, you might find useful to use the filtering options, which we introduced additionally to this new functionalities for FuelEU. First of all, if you want to display if you're working with monitoring plans, now there is a specific filter for FuelEU monitoring plan status. For example, I can quickly display. There is no draft, of course, because it's submitted to verifier. So you can choose the monitoring plan status and display all the monitoring plans in the selected statuses. And of course, you can choose one or several. Another interesting and useful filter to be used is the filter by the scope. So not only monitoring plans, but later with the next versions of the system, there will be FuelEU reports also available, and it might be useful just simply to separate and to see all the elements which are under one scope or under another scope. Again, keeping in mind that you might have more than one ship in your fleet. So there is a filter which is called legal scope, and again, you can filter by choosing FuelEU search. In this example, we will see exactly the same record because I have only one ship under FuelEU scope and which has the monitoring plan. So that's why in this specific example, both filters are showing exactly the same record on here. Okay, so maybe before I finish the presentation, apart from using the interface option, already with the version which will be available in August, you will be able to use the upload of data in bulk. And this also concerns for the monitoring plans. So FuelEU monitoring plans will be available to be uploaded in bulk here using the new XML and XSD schema, which will be available in the support section. In this section, where can I get information about the XML interface? Yes, please. Again, this is the test environment, so it might not be the same as you see in production. So it will appear here after the deployment of the new version. So it will be here. Before that, you can still, if you want to a bit, sorry. We already shared the draft version of the schema, of the XSD schema for the new FuelEU monitoring plan version. And since it's not yet deployed, it's not yet live system, you cannot use it. It's available in this section, which is also the new section which we introduced recently, what is planned in the future releases of Thetis MRV. This section mentions the next versions and the main changes which can be expected in the system. And also here you can spot, maybe it's not very visible, but there is a link where you can download the draft XSD of the FuelEU monitoring plan. However, please note that it's a subject to change. There might be minor, but still changes. So after the deployment, the one should be taken from this section. Okay, I think from my side, that's it.
Yeah.
Back to you, Jose.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. I think it was very helpful. Just regarding the cloning functionality, because there was many comments. Not sure if it was clear what I mentioned. So what you've seen in the demonstration of Tatiana is what will be available in the first version, meaning you will be able to clone from the MRV monitoring plan. The functionality that will not be available is cloning the FuelEU monitoring plan from one ship to the other. That will appear at the latest stage. The timeline is very challenging for everyone, for us and for you for sure. This was and it is a big development in the Thetis MRV because it is a significant change allowing to companies to allow the submission of information to the same ship. Regarding the date of the deployment, we are doing the verification or the test of this version. Some hiccups need to be corrected by the contractor before the deployment. So we are really aiming to deploy the version as fast as we can, but we clearly need to correct some of the issues that we still have at the moment with this version. Regarding the video tutorials, we recorded with this version. We are doing the edition of the tutorials at this moment related to the functionalities that we presented today, and we intend to make them available in the same day or very close to the day of the release of the version. So it is very challenging for everyone. We are doing our best. Also in the help desk, there was many comments. There is a lot of questions appearing in the Fit for 55 help desk. We are doing our best to reply as we can. We will try to fix some of the backlog that we currently have at the moment, and try to allow for provide you the assistance as best as we can. Just going for some of the questions that we had from the chat. So still regarding the location of the fuels, there was a comment regarding how to calculate the emission factors. Just to say that fuels, even if in a blend, they need to be reported per fuel type. So if you have a blend of biofuel with the fossil, you need to report them separately. So you will not do a calculation to estimate the emission factor for the blends. Blends need to be reported separately, so there will be no calculation of emission factors for the blends. Just regarding, there were also some questions that is more related to the MRV ETS, namely the opening of MO accounts and some definitions related to port of calls that, although will have an impact also in FuelEU, it's being discussed and prepare further information in the definition of port of calls. Namely for the offshore operations. We will not address that today because it's being discussed in the scope of the ETS MRV, and the question that it's being made, it's issues that it's being discussed at the moment, and you should receive further guidance in the near future. There was here a question related to one of the new tables that is related to the difference between at berth, where a new requirement was included for FuelEU from the quayside to the at anchorage, and why this is needed. This is needed because for the ships that will have an obligation to connect to the OPS, the penalty if they don't connect to the OPS, it will be related to the time at berth. But if you are in the port that you would have an OPS connection in the quayside, but not at the anchorage, so we need to know during the port of call, the time that you spent at the quayside, that will be related to that penalty. But if after the quayside you went and go to an anchorage in the same port of call, we need to deduct that amount of hours to have the calculation of the FuelEU penalty. So this differentiation, because at berth is the time at quayside plus the time at anchorage, is needed for the calculation of the FuelEU penalty related to the connection to the OPS. So this is mostly related to container ships and passenger ships with the obligation to connect to the OPS system. There was also a question related to if it is needed a mandate for FuelEU Maritime. There is no mandate from the ship owner to the ISM company in the FuelEU Maritime, because we're like a regulated entity is always the ISM company, so it will not be up to the ship owner to mandate an entity in regarding the FuelEU Maritime. Don't know if you, Peter, want to address some of the questions that appeared.
Yes, thank you, Jose, and thank you for all the questions. I mean, first and foremost, the most important question is, of course, the deadline of the 31st of August. We understand the real challenges and that it causes, and also the frustration from your side. It is indeed due to the difficulty that appeared in this way is indeed due to the various delays that we suffered on our side. Our intention, of course, was to have everything in place well in advance before August, but we couldn't do it for reasons beyond our control. Now, what will happen to those companies who are late? I mean, if you see the basic FuelEU regulation, there are no sanctions for late submission. And also, as we know, as I know, in the case of the ETS monitoring plans, there were several companies, quite a percentage of the companies that were late, and there were no penalties, no sanctions taken against them. So we can say that the same will happen here in case of the FuelEU as well. What we would like you to is to start working to do your best to fill in the monitoring plan as soon as possible, to register them in the FuelEU database as soon as possible, and obviously it will be completed according to your best efforts. So our position is that we don't change the deadline that is already enshrined in the basic regulations, but we will be flexible about companies, operators who are submitting, who are not meeting the deadline and submitting monitoring plans in September. Maybe another question is, who has to submit a monitoring plan? On which vessels is there an obligation? And what if a vessel is not planning to call in the EU, but then it does not have a monitoring plan, and then changes there's a change of plan, and still the vessel is calling in the European port. Here, the case is that the regulation permits for ships without a monitoring plan to call in European calls, but a monitoring plan has to be submitted to the verifier, to the FuelEU database, as a maximum 2 months after the first port of call in the EU. So there are also flexibilities included here. There was another question about further implementing acts that are also forthcoming. And indeed, there are 3 that we've been working on. One is on onshore communication and onshore power supply. The second one, the implementing act that is actually addressing the FuelEU database. And the third one is implementing act on the criteria for the acceptance of zero emission technologies. On all of these 3 acts, we've been consulting the European Sustainable Shipping Forum's subgroup and also member states, but these drafts are still not ready for a full public consultation. This will happen over the autumn. And then we are accepting an adoption by the end of the year. There's another request to circulate the list of verification bodies that are meeting the two criteria of having already accredited for MRV-ETS and also applied for to be a verifier under the FuelEU regulation, and we shall do that as soon as possible in the early days of August, hopefully. There was a question whether international voyages has to be recorded per voyage, and this is the case. The FuelEU database, the FuelEU regulation is a voyage per voyage recording. So this is an obligation for intra-EU and also for international voyages as well. Then there were some questions about transshipment ports and autonomous voyages for that, including transshipment ports and voyages that are including outermost regions. And here the regulation again is very clear. So voyages to outermost regions, again, only 50% of the trip will count, the same as for international voyages. And also, if a vessel calls at a transshipment port, it will be not considered as a port of call. So actually, we have to look at the voyage from the EU port of call to the first real port of call after the transshipment port, and then we take the 50% of that. I think maybe that's it for the moment, but we will make an attempt to answer all questions after the webinar. So back to you, to Jose, for the moment.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Just trying to clarify this issue of the flexibility mechanisms. Peter already mentioned the issue of the verifier, but there is still questions appearing on that. Just trying to explain. One of the questions was if it is related or if there will be data in the monitoring plan related to the flexibility mechanism, and the answer is no. The flexibility mechanism, it's dealt, and the options that the companies will do is done after the FuelEU report. It is not included in the monitoring plan what will be the strategies that the companies will have related to the flexibility mechanism. So the flexibility mechanism, banking and borrowing, and the pooling, the company will select after the verification of the FuelEU report every year. So the FuelEU report will be verified till March, and during April, companies will select which flexibility mechanisms they want to use. The questions about the verifier is yes, the company, when requesting to use the pool, will select the verifier, and the verifier can be the verifier of one of the ships, but it also can be a verifier that it's not the verifier that assessed the FuelEU report, so it can be different. What the companies will do is to reach an agreement with the other companies that want to pool the ships. They select the number of ships. The overall compliance balance of the ships in the pool has to be positive. They select how they intend to distribute the compliance balance of that year between the several ships, and then they select the verifier to do the allocation and the verification of the pool. When the pooling mechanism is finalized, the verifier responsible for the pool will approve the allocation of the compliance balance. With the approved allocation of the compliance balance, then the verifier responsible for the FuelEU report will continue the process to issue the document of compliance. So, but the process of the pooling, it can be a different verifier. Just let me just check. There were also some questions related to the proof of sustainability, how the companies will get the emission factors for sustainable fuels. So This is being discussed at the moment between DG Klima, DG Move, and DG Energy, and the work is being done how to establish the link or how to have a proof of the RED compliance and the emission factors to be used not only for FuelEU Maritime but also for ETS MRV. What you can expect is that a guidance will appear. Probably there will be an interim solution apart from the proof of sustainability already foreseen under the RED. It's being discussed at the moment, and further guidance will be provided for you to have a mechanism to prove the compliance with the RED requirements related to the fuels. There were also an issue if this is only applicable for bunkering in Europe. The discussion is that what is being prepared is a certification under RED that also for bunkers that want to do that outside of Europe. So if a fuel is compliant and has a RED certification, it doesn't matter if it happened in Europe or outside Europe. So thank you very much for being present today. As I already mentioned, we intend to share the recording and the presentations in EMSA website, and the planned future events will be shared, and also the versions of the TETIS MRV you can check under the support page, the updates of when we are intending to release the different versions. So thank you very much for your attending today, and we will see you soon as we will have more events in the second semester of this year.